Oh, you're
Cool.
sure.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How's it going? We're super excited to help kick off Trailhead DX here. Very excited to be one of the first sessions, and really appreciate you guys making the time to come to our talk. We're here to talk about Lightning page and app customizations, and thinking about that in a kind of designerly way. And to keep our intros super brief, my name is John Vollmer,
I'm Noah Guyot.
and we're both designers with Salesforce's UX team, our user experience team. So we're working on Lightning and many other things, trying to deliver the best experience possible for you guys. But first, everybody's favorite slide, and maybe a way for you guys to kind of like wake up your eyes a little bit by squinting and deciphering it. As always, we just want to make sure that you're making purchasing decisions based on what's available now. And so one of the super cool things about Lightning is that it acknowledges that every organization works in its own way. So there's a particular confluence of people and processes and events that come together that your company uses to create impact in the world, to create value. And it's something that Salesforce acknowledges sort of at the platform level, given the sort of deep customization and extensibility we provide. It's also one of the central design tenets of Lightning experience. And that's expressed through some of our recent features we've released around My Lightning. Definitely the sort of click-to-configure tools for Lightning App Builder, and as well as making sure that Salesforce can present itself as your brand with some of our org theming capabilities. And so admins with just clicks now have, more than ever, have an ability to customize Salesforce and make it look and work the way that you want it to. But with that comes a whole set of additional responsibilities and opportunities and questions that you'll get as an admin or a developer or a business analyst. With this new set of tools, these new paintbrushes and paints and a larger canvas, if you will, you'll be able to craft experiences that match your users' particular needs and use cases. But it also means that you're going to be asking and answering questions that maybe you didn't have to before with Classic. Just because you've got a whole range of things to consider, like what should have given page or app before? What kind of activities or tasks is it trying to support for your end users? Who are you designing this for? And what is the particular arrangement of elements on the screen that's going to result in the best user experience? And so in some ways, we've kind of given you this new set of tools, but we've also asked you to put on some new hats, or maybe hats that you've had on a little bit right now, but have on much more with My Lightning and tools like Lightning App Builder. You're kind of having to act as a designer and also a researcher to understand what's going on and how to manifest those needs in the right way. And so, yeah, we really, as Salesforce, we really depend on you all. You all are our enablers, our advocates in terms of trying to take the product and the platform we're designing and shape it to your particular use cases. So we thought we'd, Noah and I, as designers, we thought we'd come today and share our perspectives on how we could use some of the approaches and also design principles that we think about as designers every day, and the kinds of things we talk about with our research colleagues, and combine that with the kind of savvy Salesforce administration that I know you guys are already doing. So we're hoping you'll come away with some ideas and insights in 3 areas today. First, we'll talk about learning from your users and how to incorporate some mindsets and approaches that we use from user-centered design. And we'll also give you a set of pretty tactical, ready-to-use tips for how you can tailor Lightning pages and apps to meet your needs using new tools like Lightning App Builder and other My Lightning capabilities. And as designers, we also work and explore concepts in ways that may be somewhat familiar, but maybe new for you guys. And so we wanted to share some thoughts around prototyping as well. So it never ceases to amaze me how complex our customers' businesses are. Even relatively simple companies, they have a lot of complexity that they have to deal with, and one of the places that complexity expresses itself is in one of the workhorse screens of Lightning Experience, record pages. And so you can end up with, just trying to deal with the inherent complexity in your space, you can end up with screens that are kind of large. They're getting pushed around by the number of data you're trying to deal with, maybe in the form of fields as well as related lists. But really what we'd love to get to is more of a cut down, focused, really lean experience. And so we're going to use record pages as a way to kind of scope our conversation today. Certainly what we'll be talking about is more broadly applicable, but some of the tactical advice applies to making the most of your record pages. So for the Learn section, I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Noah.
All right, thanks, Sean. So learning about your users. This is sort of where everything starts. Next slide. First off, the big thing, observe your users in their natural habitat. Don't bring them into a conference room to talk about how they do their job. They're going to tell you a glossed over version of the truth. Go shadow them at their desk, their workstation, out in the truck if they're out in the field. Get to know wherever they're using Salesforce for real and understand what they're doing. And keep an eye out for shims and crutches in their environment. That can be a post-it note on their monitor about dealing with a particular problem. It can be talking to the person in the next cube, saying, oh, how do I fix X? How do I do Y? Next. And while you're sitting with them, watch and listen closely. What activities are the users doing? What steps are they taking as they're doing their work? Where are they running into roadblocks? What information is missing? And also, what things are working well? You don't want to mess up the things that are actually working for them today. Next. And as you're starting to have internal conversations about the way you're going to change the system, be careful of talking about the user. The user ends up being this very amorphous model that is different for different people. What we suggest is look for archetypes as you're talking to your users and distill those into personas. And you can actually go down to Camp Design downstairs and you'll learn a bit about the personas we use at Salesforce. That way you can talk about a sales leader versus a pipeline builder and how their needs are different and their information needs are different. Now back to John to talk about tailoring the experience.
Yeah, so let's get into some of those approaches for improving record pages with our kind of like designer and researcher hats on. So one of the things we're always looking to do as user-centered designers is find ways to simplify the experience, kind of looking for elements on the page and figuring out which ones are extraneous or ways to streamline the experience. So I think the baseline step is to take a look at your record pages and find ways to shrink them if you can through, especially looking at things like fields and related lists. I don't know if folks are familiar with the Salesforce Optimizer tool. It's a really great way to get some information about field usage in your org. So that's sort of like a great way to get a first understanding of like what out there is, on everybody's layout, but maybe isn't being used a ton. And then in some of our research interviews with admins, we've learned that the people are using some really awesome and crafty ways to try and optimize these pages. We know that plucking a field out of an org isn't easy. It's often attached to all sorts of stuff, and certainly you can use ecosystem tools like Field Trip to figure out like what those connections are. But a crafty workaround we've learned some folks are using is labeling fields in a way that lets people know that, hey, this might be removed, and you can sort of like, that's another way to get people to reach out to you if the field that you're thinking about relocating or removing is something they actually really depend on. And people are using sections down at the bottom of their Lightning pages to kind of collect these fields and maybe hide them away, tuck them away a little bit before they're finally removed. Next up is thinking about what we call in the design space information hierarchy, or really thinking about what information is present, how is it grouped, how is it labeled, and what priority is it presented in. And so I think as admins and developers, people who are really familiar with the guts of how things are all plumbed together and what the object model is and how this all relates, sometimes we think we really know what these groupings are. And we might have a really good intuition about this, but it's also a great practice. We as designers use clustering exercises or card sorting exercises to sit down with users, provide them with all the different sets of, could be at the component level, could be at the field level, and have them do that clustering to see, to surface what their mental models are for how, given their particular role and set of activities they're trying to perform, what is the right grouping and relative priority of the information they're trying to see. So you could do this super lo-fi with just post-it note clustering. You always see pictures of designers with post-it notes. We love that. But you can also use some online card sorting tools to get, if you need to sample a broader population and get some assistance with the kind of analysis to understand what clusters are bubbling up. And then another way to improve pages is by thinking about how they're organized, both to create a really focused experience and also to improve page performance. So inside of Lightning App Builder, which we'll take a quick look at, we have the ability to use container components like tab sets and accordions to take things, especially like related lists, report charts, other components, and organize them in ways that are really different from Classic. So in Classic, you had everything stacked all together. But in Lightning, you can actually specify individual related lists and group those in ways, organizational schemes that might match up with moments in a record's lifecycle or parts of your organization or even roles. So you can see here, like, we have sales and support tabs that have subsets of the related lists and other components that are right for those functions. And lastly, as designers, we always think about how to hone things down. We feel like an ideal experience is one where you're just getting the information and functionality you need in a given moment to do the job that you're trying to do right then and there. And in Lightning App Builder, you can use our dynamic Lightning Pages functionality to write rules that determine when components show or hide. That's pretty cool, because you can then have a page that transforms and tailors itself to how what your users' needs are, what your different personas' needs are in the moment. Just super cool. And Noah's going to talk about iteration.
Yeah, thanks, John. And so now that you've got a sense of the way you want to structure the information on the page, now let's start doing some experimentation. Let's start iterating on what the actual page could look like. Next, please. First off, start off in a really lightweight way, something paper prototypes, whiteboard sketches, honestly, even spreadsheets have different columns for your different personas, your different user types, so that you can get a sense of what their structure is. And we've even got a link here to a record page whiteboarding tool, paper prototyping tool, excuse me, that we've used for a number of workshops and things over the years. So you can feel free to go ahead and download that. I'll get out of the way of the URL there. Next. And with those early prototypes, get feedback early and often. Get these in front of the users that are going to be using these things. Especially the more analog these prototypes, the more comfortable people are going to feel playing around with them and giving you feedback. If you give them a nice polished screen, they're going to think, oh, they've done a ton of work. Paper, whiteboard conversations, Post-its make it really easy for people to feel engaged in the process and give honest, good feedback. Next, please. And then once you've got that sort of down to a solution or two or three, start prototyping in App Builder itself. App Builder makes it really easy to drag and drop things to sort of start to mimic that. Do it on either a sandbox org or a separate page within your production org, obviously, so you're not messing with people's day jobs. And we've even found that there's a Salesforce Labs app where you can actually start popping in images. So you can take some of those whiteboard sketches that you've done of a new component you're going to build, take a photo of that, pop it right in the page, and get the feedback from your stakeholders based on that input.
Great. So just to recap, we shared some ideas and perspectives in 3 different areas. Ideas for ways to learn about your users in user-centered and design research friendly ways. Some tactical tips for tailoring your record pages to create those really focused experiences that'll make your users productive and engaged, and ways that you can take some of the approaches we use as designers to iterate and explore potential solutions. So thanks a ton. We're going to do a little bit of demo. I can show you guys App Builder to take a look at some of the things we just talked through. And wanted to throw up again one more time that the link to the record page paper prototyping kit we have. It's sfdc.co/record page template. It's a PDF you can download. You can print it out, and then everything's fair game. Cut it out, arrange the components how you want, scribble on them, sketch new components, bring them in. We hope that you find it really useful. On that page, you'll also see.
Do you want to give a shout out to Eric's talk later about some of those new features?
That's a great point. Yeah, so check out the Lightning customization roadmap session coming up this afternoon for some cool stuff that we actually didn't even include in our presentation about other capabilities that are coming that is going to let you optimize fields on your record pages in cool new ways. So let me switch over to the demo here. Sweet. Awesome. So just wanted to show y'all where you can find some of the things we discussed today. So for the Salesforce Optimizer report, you'll find that in Setup, way at the bottom here. There's this Optimizer node. And it's super easy. You can just hit the run optimizer, authenticate into whatever sandbox or org you want to run it on, and you'll be delivered a very nicely formatted PDF that'll surface all sorts of great information that you can use to optimize administration, as well as the field usage things that we showed. And then for folks who are less familiar with the My Lightning features we have right now and how easy it is to, as a declarative admin, get in and customize this experience and sculpt it to fit your organization's needs, in Lightning you can go ahead and just go from the setup gear here, hit Edit Page, and that'll bring you into Lightning App Builder. I'll just call out a few things that we discussed. So one of the things is for the tab set component here, you can see that you can very easily create custom tabs. So you can organize this however you'd like. We've seen people creating, this is sort of more of a role or team-based division. We've also seen folks organize content that's well-suited for particular phases in a record's lifecycle. And you can also notice that within these custom page tabs, there's also individual related lists here. So you can control the order here. You can also insert other components, like on the sales tab here, we have a report chart we've included. So it's really great to be able to interleave list data and also other custom components and report data that you might have. And then speaking to the app builder as prototyping tool that Noah mentioned, here's an example of one of those images that sketched out super quick. You know, we could imagine that this is a custom account health component that we're thinking about building to try and show our stakeholders where that might integrate into the current experience and drive home the value it will provide. You can use that Salesforce Labs component we mentioned, and all you have to do is upload that file to your org, and then you can reference it from within Lightning App Builder to populate this component. And of course, that can be placed anywhere on the page. And lastly, just want to call out, you'll notice that this component has a little extra badge on it, and that's because it's got some of that dynamic Lightning page criteria attached to it. So for every component in Lightning App Builder, you can go to the filter area down here and build out the criteria that you will determine when this component is going to show up. So you can do some pretty cool things. It can be based on record data, let's say the size of an opti or the kind of an account, or even you can also use data based off of user data. So it could be a component shows and hides based on a particular profile that someone has. So just wanted to give you guys a tangible expression of the kinds of things we talked about today. And I think we've got like three and a half minutes left, so would love to take some questions if y'all have them. Sir. Yeah, so the question was, why do we use paper prototyping rather than a software tool? So I think as designers, we love using paper prototyping partly because it's just really fast. It's also, as Noah acknowledged, the lower fidelity makes it feel like it's less set in stone. And that actually draws people into the process. So as you're sitting with other admins or other business stakeholders, or if you're sitting with end users and you're doing a participatory design exercise, paper makes it so that everybody feels a little bit more comfortable that because the tools are so approachable, they can participate fully in the process and sketch their own ideas. Instead of investing a lot of effort into something that looks finished, you can come up with 3 or 4 different potential expressions really quickly and drive through that exploration process in a way that maybe gets past the initial ideas that you might get to and gets to a more insightful idea after that.
Yeah, and to further that, everyone learned to draw in grade school, right? It's a very low barrier to entry. As soon as you bring any new tool in there, it's like, oh, I don't know the tool. They'll take a step back. So make it as lightweight as possible for them to be engaged and participate.
Cool. Anybody else? Sir. Yep, absolutely. You can just take a look for the image and carousel component from Salesforce Labs, available on AppExchange currently. It's been around for a while. All you have to do is drop it into your org, and you'll see it show up in the components panel in Lightning App Builder, and you can start referencing images that you've uploaded to your org. One more.
Sure.
Yeah, so the question was the dynamic Lightning page display criteria, what can that apply to? And the answer is any Lightning component that appears inside of a Lightning page or a Flexi page for the developers out there. So at the component level, that's how you can define criteria to have things show and hide.
Yeah.
So cool. Thanks so much, everybody, for giving us your time at this primo spot at the very beginning of Trailhead DX. I'm John.
Noah.
And thanks so much. Cheers.